Illinois on the record. The problems the state is having now that it's gone more than 90 days without a budget. Plus, taking action for education. We're sitting down with women in leadership to talk about the importance of educating girls. And we're sitting down with the president of Illinois State University.
Now, from your local election headquarters, this is Central Illinois on the record.
Welcome to Central Illinois on the record. I'm Paul Cicchini. The state of Illinois has now gone 96 days without a budget. When lawmakers return to Springfield, the state will have gone 112 days without a spending plan in place. More than a dozen families in Central Illinois won't be able to get treatment for their autistic children, and you can blame it on the lack of a budget. The autism program of Illinois has not received any of its $4 million in funding. Its Springfield location has shut down services for anyone who needs financial help from the state. The program tried to operate as long as it could without funding, but said it had to stop services at the end of September. The lack of a state budget may also mean more trash. That's because the state's recycling administrators are on the layoff list. The pink slips are on hold thanks to a lawsuit, but if they're eventually let go, it could mean more garbage piling up in landfills.
We're talking certainly hundreds of tons that are going to be going into landfills as a result of these recycling programs not being offered.
The $7 million program has diverted millions of pounds of trash from landfills. It's also helped cities and towns, businesses, and nonprofits create and sustain recycling programs, reducing greenhouse gases and creating new jobs. The Illinois State Museum is now closed and a half dozen employees laid off. However, most of the workers are union and get to stay on. But the people who run the museum, directors and section heads, are gone.
They are curators, they are section heads, they are people who manage the museum, in effect. The museum personnel got a call 5 minutes after the press release saying that the museum was going to be closed.
Some lawmakers say closing the museum to save $4 million is short-sighted. The museum's 400,000 guests bring in $32 million in revenue for businesses, including about $2 million in state taxes. The Secretary of State's office will no longer be mailing reminders about your sticker renewals. It's all part of an effort to cut costs. You can sign up for email reminders, which cost the state next to nothing. They say eliminating those mailings will allow them to continue to provide other services.
We'll save at least $450,000 a month, which will allow us to continue providing stickers, plates, titles, things of that nature by mail.
The Secretary of State's office is also having more difficulty convincing its vendors to continue processing day-to-day transactions without payment. Hundreds of police training classes are being canceled during a time when many believe officers need more training. Without a state budget, funds are not being sent to keep these programs running. The mobile team unit travels across Illinois, providing officers training on topics of interest in specific neighborhoods. There are more than a dozen units across the state. Classes have already been canceled, and without them, fewer officers are equipped to handle certain situations.
And 192 communities are going to be affected because these 192 communities are not going to be getting their traffic safety funding to provide the extra enforcement.
In 2014, the state-funded Training and Standards Board provided training to over 57,000 officers. The State Board of Elections says it's running into trouble for next year's presidential race because the state still hasn't passed its budget. People who oversee state elections say they could start missing deadlines if a budget isn't agreed to soon. The Board of Elections must electronically connect all of its registration points for next year's election. The agency doesn't have money for necessary computer technicians and support for its new system.
It's the uncertainty of where we're going to be able to get the money to pay for the mandates that were imposed by the legislature at the end of last year.
It's not just mandates. Candidates looking to run have to collect a certain number of signatures to be put on the ballot, but the board doesn't have the money to pay judges to oversee any objected petitions. Former Speaker of the House Dennis Hastert is looking for a way out of a trial which could reveal details of alleged sexual abuse. Former congressman from Illinois is accused of lying to the FBI and paying more than $3 million in hush money to cover up abuse of a high school student decades ago. The accusations stem from when Hastert was a high school teacher in Yorkville. A federal judge gave the sides until October 15th to agree on a plea before he sets a trial date. Planned Parenthood fires back after a contentious debate on Capitol Hill, how the women's group is fighting to keep federal funding. And up next, we're putting ISU on the record and sitting down with the university's president. All right, welcome back. Joining the program, Larry Dietz. He is the president of Illinois State University. Thank you very much for joining the program.
Real pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, interesting time in Illinois because the state lacks a budget, something that you and other university presidents spoke out about last week in a letter calling on leadership. Tell us a little bit about that letter.
Well, a group of university presidents and chancellors have been meeting once a week via conference call really since about January. We have been offering testimony whenever we're asked to offer testimony and so forth. We felt it was time to send a letter to the governor and other top legislative leaders expressing our concern about the lack of funding and the need for more predictability in terms of our funding. So that was the gist of the letter.
You talk about unpredictability and a need for funding. What does that mean exactly? I mean, what can people at home take away from that? How is it impacting you on a day-to-day basis?
Well, it impacts each of the institutions a little bit differently, depending upon the strength of enrollment, which is a major financial driver anymore. And so it's difficult to say one size fits all because it really doesn't. The one size that does fit all is that we don't have funding yet, and it's difficult to be able to predict the future without some of the funding. In our situation, for example, at Illinois State, the state comes up with only 18% of the budget, but that 18% for us is about $75 million. And not having any of that or knowing whether or not it's going to be a third less of that, which is one proposal, or less than the third or whatever, just the unpredictability has students, in particular, I think, a tad anxious in terms of the MAP program because that's not been funded. And it has our faculty and staff, I'd say, across the state concerned about whether or not there are going to be layoffs and furloughs. In our situation at the university, we've not had any layoffs or furloughs, and we don't anticipate that occurring, but we would like to have a decision sooner versus later, and it's already later, so we really need some action on this.
It's very late. So how does the university go forward? I mean, you're about halfway through the first semester, and you've got a whole nother semester coming that, I mean, the two main semesters that a college has. So how do you handle that moving forward?
Well, in some respects, this is not new territory for us in that the state has done reimbursements after school has started, and they typically are late in reimbursing us. As a matter of fact, we just received FY15 last payment for last year, last month. And so the idea that it's on time all the time, it really isn't the case, but we've never been in this situation that I'm aware of that we are this late in knowing whether or not we have any funding at all. And it's that unpredictability, it's just very difficult to plan for the future.
It certainly sounds like it. So, like I mentioned, you're about halfway through this first semester. So, I mean, what's going right on campus right now? What can you maybe look to improve on as you go through the rest of the year?
Sure. Well, when I've been asked about this, I emphasize a couple of things. Number one is that we have input into what's happening in Springfield, but we obviously don't control that. And so we know people are working hard to try to come to some middle ground on this, and we hope that that happens again very soon. But the things that we do control are our planning processes. And we have excellent planning processes at the university, and I'm sure my colleagues across the state have the same thing at their institutions. And then we also control our attitude. And I guess I prefer to have a positive attitude, and whatever we will be awarded, whenever we will be awarded, we'll say thank you, and we will scale our plans to whatever that happens to be and move forward. The university, Illinois State University, is doing well. We would do better with more predictability, but as I said, we're not laying off anybody or furloughing anybody, but we'd really like to know what our financial future is going to be from the state so we can plan accordingly.
Well, I'm going to be interested to hear more about that in the near future. Thank you very much for joining the program.
Thank you.
Illinois State University President Larry Dietz. Still ahead, Women in Leadership. Our panel is talking about the importance of educating girls. Plus, Planned Parenthood is fighting back, what the Women's Health Group is saying after its leader spoke on Capitol Hill.
watching Central Illinois on the Record.
Leaders at Planned Parenthood are firing back at House Republicans after a testy hearing on the group's tactics and funding. The Women's Health Group is accusing GOP lawmakers of lecturing and blindsiding its president during 5 hours of intense questioning Tuesday on Capitol Hill. Tom Foreman has more on the battle over the federal funding of Planned Parenthood.
Planned Parenthood supporters are in an uproar over a hearing they think was a hit job, with Republican Congress members repeatedly interrupting and attacking the group's president, Cecile Richards. And no one has drawn more anger than committee chairman Jason Chaffetz.
But you don't need federal dollars in order to do this.
In a key moment, the congressman from Utah produced a chart seemingly showing a sharp reduction in cancer screenings and a sharp rise in abortions based on Planned Parenthood's own accounting.
That's what's going on in your organization.
This is a slide that has never been shown to me before. I'm happy to look at it, and but it absolutely does not reflect what's happening at Planned Parenthood.
You're going to deny that if we take those numbers out of your report?
Moments later, Richards did indeed deny it, emphatically.
Excuse me, my loggers are informing me that the source of this is actually Americans United for Life, which is an anti-abortion group, so I would check your source.
Then we will get to the bottom of the truth of that.
The truth is, while Chaffetz's office stands by the numbers, the chart is misleading, suggesting more abortions than cancer screenings at Planned Parenthood in 2013, when cancer screenings actually outnumbered abortions almost 3-to-1. Still, Republicans landed some other blows, pointing out that Planned Parenthood, far from scraping for cash, had a $127 million surplus last year. That the group's political action committee portrays Planned Parenthood as nonpartisan.
Yet in 2014, 100% of the contributions went to Democrats.
And that Richards is paid well for a nonprofit boss.
Actually, my annual compensation is $520,000 a year.
The outrage from Planned Parenthood is still reverberating.
What I thought we saw yesterday from the Republican majority was evidence that they don't understand women. They certainly don't understand women's health.
An effort by conservatives to tie Planned Parenthood funding to a bill that averted a government shutdown failed. A bill approved Wednesday keeps the group's funding intact. A date has been set to elect a new House Speaker when John Boehner's replacement will be picked. But up next, we're sitting down with female leaders to talk about women and opportunity. Stay with us.
You're watching Central Illinois on the Record.
All right, welcome back. Joining the panel this week, Dr. Sharon DeMoulin-Karat from District 150 and Bradley University Student Body President Sarah Handler. Thank you both for being on the program.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, last week, First Lady Michelle Obama was on the new Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and they were talking about a new presidential initiative called 62 Million Girls, educating girls in the United States and all around the world. And it got me thinking about how important that is, not just in third world countries where education is almost impossible in some parts to come by, but right here in our own backyard, something that both of you are on the front lines about. And I want to start with you, Dr. Karat, talking about just the importance of engaging not just all students, but particularly girls, and knowing that there is a future for them, and you are somebody who can stand up as I'm here now. Look how I got here.
It is very, very important, and this year, for example, we're focusing on providing even more options, not only for girls but for all students, as it relates to the traditional academic route, as it relates to IB programming, for example, and enriched classes, AP classes, but also an opportunity to focus on career pathways and specifically identifying their niche and focusing on things that they really enjoy and would like to pursue.
And Sarah, you are in a unique position because you're in a position of leadership and you're in a STEM field, two things that girls are often encouraged to be a part of. Talk about how you got to where you are and maybe some of the challenges you faced on the way there.
Sure. So growing up, I actually was never really encouraged to pursue a STEM field. It wasn't until later in high school, once I visited Bradley, that I realized I can do this. Despite good math grades, good science grades, it was never something I was encouraged to pursue because my personality didn't fit that of an engineer. I think one of the biggest things that I try to do is show girls that there is not one engineering personality. If you're a girl and you like math and science, you can be an engineer. And once we start to dispel that stereotype, I think we'll see many more girls in the discipline.
That seems very, convincing. And Dr. Karat, you were nodding the entire time. It's like you knew exactly what Sarah was talking about.
Yeah, it's true. And actually, before being in that position and being a principal at Manual and Whittier and Roosevelt, I ran a math and science. Actually, it was called TSTM, Tomorrow's Scientists, Technicians, and Managers program, funded by Caterpillar, and we saw a lot of girls go through and pursued careers, STEM careers, and the things that really I think made the program really successful. There were a lot of mentoring opportunities, visits. They were able to also hear from individuals who were successful in these various occupations and fields, and that was very, very successful. So we have to continue to provide that exposure to broaden their horizons and say, hey, it's possible, you can do it, I've done it, and it really works, but it has to be intentional, it has to be deliberate, and just having faith and confidence in them. So I'm proud of Sarah.
When it comes to the students that you oversee, obviously there's only so much you can do because the teachers are with them for a certain portion of the day. You see them on and off. You have obviously a lot of students in District 150. But how do you make sure that, I guess, there's a connection between what's happening in school and what's happening at home so that students there have the support they need to, kind of cross that line and know there's a future?
Yeah, so we have a variety of initiatives through our district. Parent University, I'm sure you've heard of that. And just reaching out more to parents. We have lots of discussions in terms of building relationships with families, providing tips as it relates to a better collaboration, a stronger collaboration. We have ongoing conversations as it relates to working together as partners, that we're all on the same page. Parents do want their kids to be successful, and so do we. And just continuing to be welcoming, be open, listen, be more collaborative, co-construct together. And so we're heading in that direction.
Did you have a group? I mean, you said you didn't have necessarily the push from the outside, but did you have like a group of friends, or how did you know that I just have to do this, and how did you keep positive about, getting to where you are?
Sure. So when I visited Bradley, it was actually an industrial engineering student who first told me about the discipline at all and then convinced me to study it. I was going to be a political science major. I had no desire to go into engineering, and then I talked to this woman who was also very outgoing, very passionate about her field, and showed me that I could do this, and it was a role model in many ways. And I think that's what it really comes down to. You cannot downplay the importance of having role models. If young girls don't see someone who's older and being successful in STEM fields or in higher education in general, they aren't going to think that they can be there either. So making sure that there are role models for these girls, whether it's friends that are older, whether it's teachers, whether it's their parents, is really important.
And it's something that you are doing in your capacity, not just as a STEM student and as a student leader, but outside of Bradley as well, right?
Absolutely. I volunteer with Girls on the Run at a local Peoria school, and making sure that girls in my position are going out and showing younger girls, hey, this is something I'm doing, this is how I'm succeeding, and you can too, is so important. You definitely have to go back and be that person that you needed when you were younger.
Piggyback on that at all? It seems like really good advice for somebody who has a young girl at home.
Yes, and Bradley University actually, they've actually adopted one of our schools, Sterling Middle School, particularly the athletic department, and once actually on a quarterly basis, they come in and they're role models. They have conversation with kids about college and their goals and aspirations, and so those things are very, very important. Just getting in front of the kids and sharing with them and providing the possibilities. So thanks to Bradley for continuing to work with us during, it's called College Days. Once a month, the district has a huge emphasis on college, and we wear shirts, and I see a lot of Bradley shirts around at District 150, so yeah.
Well, it seems like both of you are doing something right in terms of where both of you are today, and seem like both to be great role models, not just for the students, for you when it comes to District 150, but you at Bradley and in the community. So thank you both for coming on the program and having this conversation with me. I really appreciate it. From District 150, Superintendent Dr. Sharon DeMoulin-Carrot, and the Bradley University Student Body President, Sarah Handler. Still ahead, he leaked thousands of federal documents, and now he's gone social, what Edward Snowden did after joining Twitter. And shutdown averted for now. A look at the next deadline for federal lawmakers to reach a budget deal. A government shutdown has been avoided for now. The House on Wednesday gave its approval to a spending plan passed by the Senate. Democrats provided most of the votes to approve the measure. It funds the government through December 11th. President Obama will sign the bill. The House is preparing for its post-John Boehner era. An election to replace the House Speaker will happen October 8th, according to a statement from Boehner. The Ohio Republican announced last week he's leaving Congress October 30th. Boehner's surprise resignation set off a scramble in the House GOP conference for a new leadership team. The number 2 House Republican, California's Kevin McCarthy, is the frontrunner for the speakership. Finally, former government contractor Edward Snowden joined Twitter, and the man who has been living in Russia after leaking thousands of government documents is only following one user. It's the official account of the National Security Agency and Central Security Service. That's going to do it for this edition of Central Illinois on the Record. You can stay in touch with us using social media. Connect with WMBD and me on Facebook and Twitter using the hashtag CIOTR. We will see you next week.
The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of WMBD, WYZZ, or Nexstar Broadcasting Group.